Understand this a little more, let's join Andrew Schroeder. He's the Vice President of Research and Analysis at Direct Relief. Andrew Schroeder, welcome to our programme. Is this not always a problem if you're trying to help the innocent where a war is going on?
War is always a problem in terms of potential politicization of aid. I think we've seen an increase in this over the last several years, even though we've had fairly strong agreements in the case of Sudan with the Jeddah commitment, which emphasize the primacy of international humanitarian law in these cases. Nevertheless, yes, we have consistent problems with conflict and aid diversion.
I mean, it used to be the case, I suppose, that even you were at war with some dispute between various parties, there was a sense of, human decency, perhaps, that indigenous populations had to be fed, had to be watered. Are those who are in conflict just getting more ruthless nowadays?
I don't know that people are getting more ruthless. I think that being able to get conflict participants to adhere to international humanitarian law is actually increasingly difficult. I mean, we see this not only in Sudan and Ethiopia, we see this in many other parts of the world, in Yemen, in Ukraine, in places where the enforcement mechanism for international humanitarian law is weak. And this is needs to be a commitment broadly on the part of the international community to make sure that we are getting parties to adhere to the neutrality standards of humanitarian assistance that have been in place for decades now.
And in particular, in the Sudan conflict, as we're reporting, the local population is fleeing, probably 1 million people on the move. Neighbouring countries like Chad, like Ethiopia, are bearing some of the brunt of that. Is it that they're not really stealing aid, they just need it? They need it to feed all these new people?
I mean, for sure, the aid is needed more desperately than ever, given the scale of the refugee crisis. There are concerns that at the scale of aid that's required, the aid itself becomes a resource that is ripe for politicizing by various parties to the conflict. And so that's why we need to make sure that mechanisms like UN OCHA's humanitarian sharing mechanism, which has been able to guarantee access to aid corridors throughout the country, are adhered to. This is where Direct Relief has been principally advocating for distribution of our own aid through UN and partners in Sudan to make sure that those UN protected mechanisms are able to function as effectively as possible. But for sure, this requires sort of daily commitment on the part of all parties to the conflict to make sure that we're not seeing this kind of diversion happen.
And if that resupply cannot go ahead, surely it just makes the exodus even worse. Local people will get up and have to walk or find any way to try and find food and supplies.
For sure. I mean, you're seeing people in the most desperate circumstances that are needing to walk, in some cases, many miles to be able to get access to basic supplies, food, water, access to medications. And this is made more problematic by insecurity, threat of violence against the local population. So ensuring that security is sort of paramount in the ability to make sure that we reduce the burden on the local population. This is also at the core of the agreements that have been signed by all parties to the conflict to make sure that sort of clear principles of aid neutrality are in place and are being adhered to. So we need to just get them to adhere to those standards and reduce the burden on the population.
Andrew Schroeder, VP at Direct Relief, thank you for your time.